Hey guys, Joey the Recovery Guy here. Today I'm going to do a Q&A. I actually have questions that were written into me by family members of addicts, and I wanted to do a video to answer some of these questions. I know that it's a big issue because, you know, if you have a family member that's suffering from addiction, it's incredibly scary, and it's really hard to know what to do because it's a high risk game. The consequences of going the wrong way are quite severe. If you have a family member in addiction, you will know just how scary it is to really make decisions. And should I give them money? Should I not give them money? Am I enabling them? Am I making it harder on them? Should I be doing this? Am I babying them? Am I sending them off into their death? Like, it's really, really, really hard. And here's one thing that I will say is that there is no cookie cutter, this is the solution. Every individual is very, very different. Some addicts I find have very thick skin and they can take a lot of criticism. Some addicts, myself included, a little bit of criticism will push me away. And even though I deserve it and it's true and it's extremely hard not to point out the flaws in this person's character that you don't think they see, sometimes that's not beneficial. First question. So Kathy asks, why don't a large number of addicts want help? Well, great question, first of all, Kathy. It's a bit of a difficult one to answer because, like, I do believe on some level all addicts want help. We get so lost in the delusion of drug use, and anything that gets in the way of our drug use, basically our brain is going to do its best to hide that from us. In order to protect ourselves from psychological damage at all the complexities of life and all the suffering that goes on and how complicated things are, our brain essentially goes, you're using drugs, whether you like it or not. So anything that's going to get in the way of us using drugs, our brain will hide. So I don't think it's so much that we don't want help. It's just that we're lost in delusion. Like, I mean, there was a lot of times in my addiction where I fully thought that I was like awesome human being. Like, well, I have a job that I show up to. I have an apartment that I live in. I have some money, you know, and I'm just denying these simple facts that my life isn't going very well. Just denying them. And this doesn't have to be a conscious process. This is our brain wanting to use drugs so bad that it's hiding all these things from us. So when people say, like, I don't want help, a lot of times it's just like they actually think they don't need any help at the time, although they clearly do. And you have probably noticed that every once in a while, if you do have a family member that's an addict, that every once in a while they will let that little bit of honesty slip. The delusion will smash and they'll become essentially who they really are for a very brief period of time. And as good as that is, it's also very heartbreaking because usually it doesn't last, and usually people will just slip right back into that kind of insane way of thinking again. Then there's the other people who say they don't want help, or at least they act like they don't want help, and that's just purely because they don't believe there's a chance that we're going to get better. I mean, me becoming addicted to a substance was the end result of a long line of insane thinking, delusional thinking, defective behaviors that I exhibited that I reinforced over and over again. Like, I just didn't see another way. Before I came into a 12-step fellowship and did the steps myself and learned all this stuff and had this spiritual awakening that gave me this new kind of perspective on life, I honestly just didn't see a way out because that addictive mind is so fundamental to my thought process that I lack the ability to call that stuff into question. So I just honestly, I don't think there's a way out. So those are the two main types of people who don't want help. People who just don't think that there's a way out, so anything that we're going to try is just going to fail, so why would you accept the help? And the people that are just so delusional and they're so lost in it that they just actually don't think they need help, even though in those rare moments of honesty they do. So great question, Kathy. Next question is by Sharon, and she asks, what helps you to admit your problem and get help? Well, there's kind of two fundamental motivational forces behind admitting the problem and actually going so far as to asking for help about it or go about getting help. And one of them's the negative and one of them's the positive. So one thing that helps is just the amount of suffering that the addict will go through. I mean, the amount of hours I've just sat there in my living room, no TV on, no music on, no video games, no other people, no stimuli, just sitting there thinking about how horrible my life was and how completely hopeless I am to ever get out of it, that goes a long way. All the opportunities we miss, all the things that pass us by, you know, watching commercials, Old Navy, everyone's dancing in those really nice clothes and their teeth are all sparkly, and just knowing that you're never going to be a part of that, and all the physical symptoms like detoxing and having no money and running out of whatever substance you use and just feeling those effects like for years and years and years. That's, you know, it's different for everybody, but let's just say the average person, that's 50% of their motivation. Then there's the other 50% of the motivation, and there actually is something that you can do as a family member of an addict to buttress that other 50%, and that's the positive stuff. That's like what lies ahead of me. A lot of people these days, we just lack encouragement. Like, if you look back like thousands of years ago, like you're basically an adult when you're 13. You get your 13th birthday anywhere around there, and there was actually a tradition held by many ancient tribes where at a certain age they would dress up as demons or, you know, act like your enemies or just symbolize the evil and darkness, and they would actually rip you from your bed. They would take you far, far, far away from where you live, and they say, make it back. And or you know, you do your rites of passage. In 7 days, we'll allow you back into the village. And that was actually a ritual that was symbolically designed to break the attachment between the child and the man. When that man returns from his rite of passage, immaturity is just and juvenile infantilism is no longer accepted. Now, we don't really have a modern day equivalent of that ritual. So our dependency is getting longer and longer. There's more and more rules. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is like, it's hard to be alive. And when you're an addict and you're threat sensitive and you've been for years now suppressing all the things that you need to exhibit in order to get better and act in accordance with life's principles, like they become farther and farther and farther away. So this 50% motivation is like half of the 50%, the positive motivation is like, these are all the things you can get. You can find the love of your life. You will be able to be a father one day. You will be able to have a fulfilling career. All those things that we want for ourselves, you can feel physically healthy. There will be a time where you can be confident in yourself and contented with life. And a huge part of that is just encouragement. I honestly think that a big part of, and mostly I deal with young men in my profession, and what I've noticed is just an extreme lack of encouragement. Instead of like criticism, all the things that can go wrong and all the things that you're doing wrong and you can't do this and you can't do that, it's more like we should be more along the lines of like, hey, there's actually more to you than meets the eye. Human beings have this inner resource of power that's incredibly strong. And sometimes as an addict, we really have a hard time seeing that in ourselves. But if you draw to the attention the fact that like I was able to go to work 6 days a week sometimes for months and months and months on end, high on heroin, sometimes detoxing, not having any money, not having any friends, like the amount of stress that was on me just by the stuff that I've caused in my addiction, the fact that I don't feel like I am a part of life and I've got no friends and I don't feel like girls will ever like me, and I don't feel like the fact that I was able to suit up and show up to work. I mean, not all the time. There was times when I went dark for periods of time, but the fact that I was able to consistently work and go and get the motivation to try and go out and get my drug, like the addicts are extremely strong people, and there's a common misconception where people say addicts are weak, and I believe the exact opposite is true. I believe that the addict being able to get up and do what they do in spite of all the things that are wrong with their life, we endure such a tremendous amount of suffering that it's enough to break anyone. If you took the strongest, most healthy, spiritualist person in the world and you just gave them all the problems that an addict will bring upon themselves and have to deal with on a daily basis, they would for sure drink every day too. I honestly think that anyone living in that amount of mostly self-inflicted pain would become an addict too. If you can just help your family members see that, see their inner strength, see that life that they always wish they could have is actually in their grasp. Yes, it is hard, but it's actually attainable. That goes a really, really long way into them just essentially just wanting that, actually believing it, having that little spark of hope. Now, there's a bit of a warning here. Addicts, myself included, notoriously irritating. And I know that's a bit of an understatement, but they will hit you where it hurts. They will blame their own mother for their own addiction. They will blame their family members. They're going to say it's all your fault. Oh, well, the only reason that we're having so much conflict is because you care about what I do. If you just left me alone, we wouldn't be so at each other's throats all the time, and like all this kind of stuff. Like, it's incredibly hard to just remain encouraging despite all the things that they're doing to themselves. Like, sometimes you just want to shout at them, even strangle them. Like, just get your shit together. Look at what you're doing. Look at all this stuff. Like, it's so obvious to everybody else that all these things are horrible, but to the addict, it's just not that simple. We're so lost in delusion, and we're so lost in the insanity, and it gets stronger and stronger over time. And essentially, like, I can go down to the downtown east side and I can spend $20, even $10, and just boom, hit the reset button. All the stuff in my life disappears. That's an incredibly intoxicating draw. So what makes addicts finally admit help? A lot of it is all the pain we go through, but a lot of it is the encouragement from our family members that are, there's a common saying, and it's like, we'll love you until you can love yourself. We're not always able to see that we have what it takes to get better, and we just want to just sit in it. We just want to sit in that, do as best we can to blot that out. And there's actually a lot a family can do to continually encourage and finally help this addict see, like, hey, I can actually get better, and it's worth it. There's something worth it on the other side of this recovery journey. Next question. Jackie asks, why do addicts... Next question. Jackie asks, why do addicts isolate from their family? Really simply, because they get in our way. The family is going to get in the way. We want drugs, and we want them now. We want our booze, and we want it now. And we don't see a way of life in which drugs and alcohol are not a part. Even the more functional or active addicts, like I played basketball, I would go rock climbing, I would go for hikes, weirdest heroin addict ever, but I would never do any of that stuff without my medicine. Where every single aspect of life was absolutely horrible without it. Now, I know that eventually, even with it, everything's horrible anyways. We don't tend to see things that way. So essentially, the really simple answer to that is that family members get in the way. They criticize us, they call us on our defective thoughts, our defective behaviors, they threaten our drug use. That's one reason why people avoid their families. Another reason is that we feel so much shame. Like, we feel so much shame. Like, I'm part of a large family myself, and everyone is really awesome, and we all get along, and there's 5 aunts, and there's 5 uncles, and there's a bunch of children, and the grandpa, and it's just like a really nice, cohesive family unit, and everyone looks nice, and they have their nice jobs and stuff like that. And then I just saw myself as the black sheep. Everyone has a good head on their shoulders. They're all happy and bright and sparkly, and they're asking me all these questions. Oh, are you going to go to school? And are you going to do this? And the answer is always no. The answer is no, actually, I want to go smoke heroin. The answer is no. Why I'm not engaged with the family right now and I'm not talking as much as I normally do is because I'm detoxing right now. When I'm around my family, I just think I just want to escape. I just want to escape in order to get high. I want to escape in order to use. I don't want the criticism. I don't want the reminders of all the things in my life that I will never be able to accomplish. That's incredibly painful. So why do addicts isolate from their families? It's too painful. Either because of the criticism, because of them getting in our way, or it's just a reminder of everything that we don't have. Next question. Sasha asked, was there something I did or said or didn't do to cause this? Oh, here's the thing. If you're especially a parent or even a wife or a husband, but especially I think this pertains to parents, is that the question is always, oh my God, did I say that right? What did I do? Did I force them away? Did I drive them away? Did I not do something? Did I do something? Here's the thing. A lot of the times, the addict will blame you for a lot of stuff. If you just look at it, simply cause and effect on that, for lack of a better word, shallower, more practical level of understanding, it does say, yeah, I said this to him and it triggered him and he left it. To be honest, a lot of this stuff is fairly arbitrary. If the addict's an addict, there's not a whole lot you could say or do that's correct. Because even going back to what I was saying about like giving the addict encouragement and like empowering them and like letting them know that they can get better, even that approach, if it's taken, if you do it too much and that's the only way, you don't provide any resistance, only encouragement, a lot of the time the addict will just think you're easy, you're a pushover, and they'll try and walk all over you and they'll try and borrow money and they'll just keep telling you, yeah, I'm trying just like you said, I'm just not doing a very good job. It's really hard to do anything right when it comes to an addict. A lot of it's easy for us to blame ourselves for the actions of an addict, especially if you're their parent. It really does not have a whole lot to do with anything that you do or say. In the absence of your involvement in the life of the addict would still continue to use. They would still find an excuse to use. I find that I always want to let family members of addicts know this. You can't really do anything right. They're always going to find a reason. They're always going to find an excuse. And I know that family members will put a tremendous amount of pressure on themselves and it will destroy them. In a lot of time, like obviously family counseling is extremely helpful, or just maybe going to Al-Anon or just getting one-on-one counseling yourself to help deal with this, because a lot of times what happens is, I don't know how to say it. A family member will put so much pressure on themselves to do the right thing that they will question every move. They will hesitate. They will divorce themselves from their natural parental instincts. They will lose their boldness that sometimes is required when confronting an addict. Like sometimes you have to accept that the addict is just going to go use. And no matter what you say to them, they're going to find something wrong with it. They're going to find a way to make you feel guilty about it, which they're incredibly good at doing. And they're going to continue on. They will love. Now, this is mostly subconscious. Addicts love when parents think they've done something wrong, because that means the parent will have to make something up to them. That means they have the power. You cannot let the addict have the power. There is exceptions. As long as you are actually genuinely trying to do the right thing in all circumstances, and you're not an authoritarian parent, you're not the archetype of the devouring mother or the tyrannical father. If you guys are physically or emotionally abusing your children, even if they are doing the same thing to you, you probably have to take a good look at yourselves. But in the absence of all these things, the addict's going to do what the addict's going to do. They're going to blame you. They're going to try and make you feel guilty. And it's going to be difficult. Remain strong and continue to do what you think is right. Okay, so the next question kind of ties into all this stuff. What do I do if my family member is an addict? Stuff like, how do we help? How do we make it worse? How do we make it better? Well, this is going to be, one word I have for you is balance. Balance, balance, balance. I don't believe, and this is part of my own nature, but I don't believe in dogmatism. I don't believe in set in stone rules. I believe that sometimes, like maybe if, here's an example. I worked at my parents' business. They employed me, they paid me. Now, I didn't get a raise for a very long time. They paid me decently well. I believe they could have paid me more. I fully believe, like I factored into the equation that I had a set of problems that the average employee didn't have. But then I factored, like I do work a lot. I do work fairly hard. I do have my but I did believe I should have made a lot more money. And I got very resentful about the amount of money that I made. Now, I probably would have been decently happy with it if I wasn't spending all my money on heroin, but obviously heroin addiction is a bottomless pit. I could never have enough money, and I became increasingly agitated at the amount of money I made. And I remember confronting my mother on this issue, like, hey, where's my goddamn raise, essentially? Like, I want my money. And she essentially said, like, I know what you're spending your money on. I'm not giving you any more money. And that really blasted me, because this resentment towards my mother and my father for not paying me what I felt I was worth, it was all consuming. Not only because there were so many things going on. They're my parents. Maybe my own parents don't think I'm good enough. Maybe they don't think I'm worth it. Maybe my parents don't care. It's because I'm an addict. They think I'm a failure. All these things. It's also my heroin money. There were so many things going on there. I spent all my money on heroin, so I couldn't buy new clothes, so I wasn't looking all good, feeling all good all the time. Like, there were so many reasons why this caused me to get huge resentment. And essentially, yeah, she just said, I know what you're spending your money on. So my parents are smart people, and they're good parents, and they do want what's best for me, despite what I said about them when I was in my addiction. And they essentially were like, how do we give, considering the fact that Joey's going to do what Joey's going to do, how do we give him enough money so that he can pay his bills, maybe just buy a little bit of heroin, not enough to make him overdose or just really go off the deep end, but not enough. If they didn't give me enough, I would have ran away altogether. So they balanced it. There was this Goldilocks number that they settled on, and it actually kept me under their watchful eye. It kept me safe. It kept me from going too far off the beaten path on either way, meaning too much or too little. And wow, did my respect for them ever grow when I finally got my shit together and realized, like, wow, that must have taken a lot of discipline on their regard and a lot of open-mindedness. I mean, I don't believe that you should give your addict children money whenever they ask, but I think if it's truly going to be a danger to them, you should give them money for certain things, like maybe every once in a while for rent. It's just, each situation is so nuanced, and I really don't believe it should be like, never give him money. Always do this. One of the questions I had that I wasn't going to necessarily answer was like, what do you do when the addict breaks into your house and steals your stuff? And like, I'm kind of more of a hard ass in that respect, and I would say call the cops immediately, get them thrown in jail. But like, maybe they only stole, $20 worth of change out of your little change jar. Like, I don't know. Each situation is so different, and I don't believe in any exact rules to follow. I honestly just ask you guys to just stress this balanced. I honestly believe that it's just the best to stress the balanced approach. Try and be measured and balanced and thoughtful throughout. If someone ever says never do this or never do that under any circumstances, I would be somewhat skeptical of their advice, although maybe sometimes there is situations where that would be right. I wish to lay down no rule of any sort. If I could, and as simply as I can put it, it's all about balance. That's it for today for the questions I wanted to answer. Thanks for stopping by. If you guys like my channel, please subscribe, even share. There's going to be plenty more videos coming out in the future. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good day.